Good morning, everyone. This is Rose Marie Aral, and today I'll be reporting two of the famous authors during the Renaissance era. These are Nicholas Machiavelli and Miguel de Cervantes. First is Nicholas Machiavelli, born on 1946 and died in 1527. Let's start for the introduction in Renaissance era. Renaissance era came from the French word means rebirth, which refers particularly to a renewed classical interest in classical learning that can be found in the writings of ancient Greece and Rome. And during this era, cultural movements started in Italy, then spread in Europe. Renaissance era considered as a division of Middle Ages and Modern era. They are called as humanists, and they also invented the first printing press in Germany around 1400s. And William Caxton during those era introduced the first printing press. One of the Italian genius of Renaissance writing are King James Bible, which translated during 1604 and published in 1611 and known as a masterpiece of English prose. Next is William Shakespeare during 1564 to 1616. His works are Romeo and Juliet and A Midsummer Night's Dream. The themes during those era is love as and physical beauty as a string for perfection. So if you are fair during that time, you are the definition of perfection. In terms of poetry, our author writes to a lady who is inflexible and non-existing. And there was pastoral poetry that idealized countryside and simple life. During those era, there were three sonnet types: the Petrarchan, the Shakespearean, and the Spursian. Niccolò di Bernardo di Machiavelli was an Italian Renaissance diplomat, philosopher, and writer, best known for The Prince, written in 1513. He has often been called as the father of modern political philosophy and political science. So, one of the famous book or of Nicholas Machiavelli is entitled The Prince. In his book, Machiavelli believed that public and private morality had to be understood as two different things in order to rule well. As the result, the ruler must be concerned not only with his reputation, but also must be positively willing to act unscrupulously at the right times. The quality of ideal prince include ruthless when necessary. It is the ability to inspire, has a military expertise, and a willingness to set virtue. The general theme of the prince is about accepting that the aims of princes, such as glory and survival, which can justify the use of immoral means to achieve those ends. The characters of the story are Francisco Sforza, the mercenary general who became Duke of Milan; Ludovico Sforza, also called as the Second Moro, the Moor, son of Francisco Sforza and Duke of Milan, which encouraged King Charles to invade Italy. Next is Caterina Sforza Riario, the ruler of cities of Forli and Imola. The setting of the story happened around the Renaissance Italy and the Florentine Republic. The tone of the story is respectful, which resembles the relationship between a teacher and their student. After describing the admirable qualities of a prince, Machiavelli emphasizes that it is not good to actually possess all of the aforementioned qualities. It is beneficial to appear to have them when necessary. In this story, Machiavelli uses metaphor For example, The Fox and the Lion, which explains the combination of cunning and strength that prince must possess in order to maintain control of his state. Next is the ancient world. Um, like his fellow Renaissance humanist, Machiavelli celebrated the achievements of the ancient world, championing the writings and accomplishment of ancient work, Roman and other Mediterranean civilization. Next is disease. Machiavelli uses disease as a metaphor for the problems and pitfalls that plague princes at their states. The Prince is a how-to for aspiring rulers. The book disregards republics and hereditary principalities to focus on mixed and new principalities. A mixed principalities is one that has previously existed but has been taken over, and a new principality is one that requires a new form of government. The moral lesson of the story is that you have to be careful to whom you trust. And as a leader, you should know how to govern and collect your ideas, to govern your ideas that would support you into something, not just by um, demanding your fellow men or your followers, but also you, a leader, as a good follower, in order to have a good relationship and foundation within the community or certain society. Next is Miguel de Cervantes, born in 1547 and died in 1616. Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra was a Spanish writer widely regarded as the greatest writer in Spanish language and one of the world's preeminent novelists. He is best known for his novel Don Quixote, a work often cited as both the first modern novel and one of the pinnacles of world literature. Don Quixote, written between 1605 and 1615. Don Quixote, also known as the indigenous gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha. It is a novel by Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra that originally written in Spanish, and it is all about a wannabe knight, Alonso Quixano, who drags a farmer, Sancho Panza, along on the series of adventures to restore the idea of chivalry back to its former glory. Cervantes himself states that he wrote Don Quixote in order to undermine the influence of those vain and empty books of chivalry, as well as to provide some merry, original, and sometimes prudent material of his readers' entertainment. Miguel Cervantes used chivalry, romance, and sanity in this two-part novel as the main theme of his story entitled Don Quixote. He also used literary devices like symbolism, allusion, and imagery to support the narration and plot of the story. In terms of tone, the tone of the story is quite ironic because from the beginning, it is clear that Miguel de Cervantes thinks that Don Quixote's efforts to be a knight are foolish. He also tells early on that his title character unluckily stumbled upon the oddest fancy that ever entered into the madman's brain, which is to become a wandering knight. But later on, Cervantes says things like, "It seemed no less impossible than unjust, that so valiant a knight should have been destitute of some learned person to record his incomparable exploits." In other words, Cervantes has adopted the language of Don Quixote himself, referring to the character as a valiant knight instead of a crazy person. For the most part, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza spend all of the novel in one of two places, an inn or the Spanish countryside. When it comes to describing the Spanish countryside, it's Cervantes' narrator who supplies us with some of the most poetic lines in the entire book. As you can see in this description of the sunset, Scare had the fair Aurora given place to the refulgent ruler of the day, and allowed him time, with the heat of prevailing rays, to dry the liquid pearls on his golden locks. Characterization. The character of the story are Don Quixote, also known as Alonso Quixano. He is a retired gentleman who wants to become a knight and goes on quest to prove himself. Sancho Panza, a farmer of Don Quixote's squire. Dulcinea del Toboso, also known as Alonso Lorenzo, a farm girl that Don Quixote fixates on and to whom he remains steadfastly and romantically loyal. The plot of the story revolves around the adventures of a noble hidalgo from de la Mancha named Alonso Quixano, who read so many chivalric romances that he loses his mind and decides to become a knight errant or caballero andante to revive chivalry and serve his nation under the name of Don Quixote de la Mancha. The moral of the story, the lesson behind Don Quixote is that there is value in all people regardless of social standing, worldview, weight, ages, etc. Don, who aspires to be chivalrous knight, shows how ridiculous antiquated beliefs can be to those who have conquered living in the present, like Sancho Panza. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.